Few coaches have had more success over the last 5 years in this country than Stefan Ptaszek, the boss with the McMaster Maruaders. Mac was in rebuilding mode in 2015, but are they positioned to pop it up into a new gear in 2016? Steph, thanks for joining us. I guess my first question out of the chute is, what sort of advice would you have for Kevin McNeil, kind of up the road, or I guess over to the side from Hamilton over in Guelph, in terms of taking a head coaching job and balancing family with it? I know you've got a young family, and I also know that in terms of being a head coach, you have to be chief cook and bottle washer. There are so many things that you have to do, and it can be an all-consuming job. How do you balance all of that?
That's a good question. That's not an exact science. I think the key is football time and family time. If you try to keep them separate, there isn't enough time. And so you got to integrate them and overlap them. One of the strengths of having this job is watching my kids grow up on this campus and see all the talented, smart, driven student athletes at McMaster, and I love it. And so having my kids on this campus and again, family time and football time overlapping, and then surround yourself with good people. If you have to be the one stirring the pot all the time, you are not going to last in this profession, and you need to surround yourself with people you believe in and that also believe in you, and that's the only way to reach your full potential. And Kev, it's okay if Guelph loses once or twice. That won't be the end of the world.
In terms of some of those good people, are those good people in place also your best recruiters?
It is. And so I think, Mac, we want to be a football family, and having a defensive coordinator that's also a vice president of RBC Investments, and a family man, 4 kids. I have 6 assistants that have been at McMaster as positional coaches longer than my student athletes have been alive. So they've been at Mac as the DB, the O-line, the D-line coach longer than my student athletes have been on the planet. This type of continuity, these type of solid human beings, it's all about being a great role model for these kids and win a few football games along the way.
How do you maintain that continuity? I mean, there are some programs out there that can maintain continuity with resources. I'm thinking into Quebec in that situation. But I know there have been challenges at times at McMaster in terms of resources. It's been something that's been addressed publicly over the last couple of years from time to time. How do you keep that group together when resources are always something that you have to keep an eye on?
Yeah, I mean, surrounding yourself with people that are passionate about the McMaster football family, and it's not an economic decision. It's a decision of family and heart, and guys like Jason Riley and Carm Genovese and Frank Gastasi. These are men that have sent their children to McMaster and have been here for 20 plus years and are likely to be here for 20 plus more. I inherited that. I got lucky with that, and I've certainly been smart enough to nurture that and keep that tradition alive. I think the key, though, is finding people that have a genuine passion and are doing it because they love it, not because of money or any other reason.
With Will Finch deciding to retire and not use his 5th year down at Western, you probably have the best quarterback in the OUA right now in Asher Hastings. I got 2 questions about Hastings and your program. First of all, just how far can he take your offense? And the second thing is, do you think his success changes the dynamic for recruiting from the OUA to the CJFL, and specifically the BCFC and the PFC? Do you think they take a look at you a little bit differently now, and are you taking a look at them a little bit differently?
I think a little bit of both, for sure. The traction of the success Asher has had everywhere he's been, and demonstrating that we've been able to help nurture his gift and grow it a little bit. I mean, 31 touchdown passes in 8 games is the best anyone's ever done in the CIS. He's had a pretty good couple of years at McMaster. And so I hope they see that traction and see I didn't create him, but I've certainly helped develop and nurture him. He's a pretty driven kid, and he was going to be successful wherever he went. But that's a pretty special year he's put together. And then for us, all our recruiting, especially out of province, because there's a distance and there's some challenges there, seeing what Asher can do and seeing that the film and the context that it directly applies to us in the OUA makes us way more interested in some of our out-of-province opportunities, whether it's CIS or otherwise, or high school or otherwise. And to be a national competitive program, you got to look at all avenues in this recruiting environment.
In terms of the recruiting environment, sometimes, like when we're out here for combines in BC, I see a number of OUA schools out here, and of course all the Canada West schools. How do you make decisions in terms of using your resources for recruiting? I know it can be a challenge at times when travel starts to add up, especially flying from Hamilton to Vancouver. How much do you rely on something like social media to bridge the gap?
Definitely helps. The Facebook and just the way the student athletes communicate these days has changed drastically and continues to evolve at rapid pace. And so trying to stay on top of it, again, I got to surround myself with some smart young men. Mike Daly, who's the free safety with the Ticats, and Coach Behe, my offensive coordinator, they're my social media guys. I'm pretty clueless with it, but the amount of touch points and the starting of the relationship, it definitely helps. At the end of the day, I think you got to actually meet human beings and have a comfort level with the people involved. And so it's a nice assist, but the actual finishing of getting a good fit academically and football-wise is still old-fashioned about the people.
Well, we're thankful to Mike Daly for getting you on Skype this morning. I want to talk a bit about the team and the team in transition. Every coach has to deal with it. I think you dealt with a lot of your transition last year, though, as the last remnants of the Vanier Cup winning team from 2011 really left the fold. Do you feel like you have a smooth transition into this year after going through some bumpiness last year?
Definitely we had way more question marks entering our 2015 year. Having a first-year starter in Asher step in, it was a great ride for a group of young men. They got us to 3 national titles in 5 years, and we knew we were starting new, and so to go 6-2 to do some really special things, we think we handled that change really well. Truthfully, if we don't get out of conference, if we don't represent Ontario, we feel like we haven't had our best year. And so we're not going to hang that year up as a total success. There's certainly learnings and good things to build on. And we want to compete for our Yates Cup this year and see if we can represent the province once again.
Well, when we're talking with Greg Marshall, he's of the belief that the lower teams in the OUA are closing the gap, and even the teams in the middle are closing the gap with the top group. You've been in the top group. There was a wildly inconsistent Laurier team that took you guys out. Do you think that Greg's on to something here, that the top is a lot closer to the bottom and the bottom's a lot closer to the top?
Yeah, our width of play is narrowed. I think Carleton is now poised to be a contender. Western's not going anywhere. Guelph's not going anywhere. Mac doesn't want to go anywhere. Laurier has shown they can compete with anybody. Ottawa's got a 5th-year quarterback that will be able to put up points and be dangerous. I think it's going to be one of the healthier years we've had, and I definitely see on the recruiting front, York and Waterloo have had great years again. And they're going to be in the mix in the coming years, and for the whole OUA, I like it when you see a different champion each year, and just the standings get shuffled all over the place.
Is that something that's organic, or is that something that the OUA leadership decided to do something about? Because I know when I stopped by and saw you about 2 years ago at your office, and you were not sweating the details about facing an opponent that you were going to beat by about 50 or 60 points. There was some real frustration there. Were people in the OUA determined to address this gap, or is this just a question of each school doing some hard work to kind of bridge their own gaps?
We've looked at ways that we could help nurture, but I think it's more the continuity and the programs themselves making a commitment. And I think all 11 schools are committed. Coach Craney in York, he's been there now an established period of time. I think he's closing in on, he's definitely over 5 and closing in on 10. And then Coach Bertoya at Waterloo is one of the best recruiters, and he's going to build that program from the ground up. And so I think it's more the institutions themselves have invested. The OUA is not about dynasties, and we look to help out the whole league. Leaders like Coach Marshall and some of the established programs do reach out to help some of us, right, the young coaches in the conference, et cetera. And so I think there's a bit of both, but mostly the programs have, if you want to compete in the OUA, this is what it's going to take. And the programs that have been out of the mix are investing in getting there.
Talk to me about what it's like working for a former NBA general manager in Glenn Grunwald. I know as a head coach, you're also part manager. What has he been able to share with you that's made your job easier?
I think one of the key ones is you'd never know that he's been an NBA GM, brought Vince Carter to Canada. You'd never know that he won an NCAA Division I basketball championship with Isaiah Thomas, and he's a humble, hardworking, bright man. You know all those things. He's very shy or slow to tell you about any of them. You got to squeeze them out of him because they're cool stories. And so watching how he carries himself in every room and the diligence towards our program and genuinely caring about our student athletes is phenomenal. I will say this, I'm glad he's got a basketball background because his Rolodex of basketball coaches and people is unbelievable. That would make me nervous if I was running a basketball program.
I got to ask you this. I ask every coach this in the offseason. What do you think the biggest challenge is facing CIS football nationally in 2016?
We're updated our recruiting rules. They were 30 years dated and needed to be changed and modified. And so getting through that transition and trying to create some consistency in the recruiting across such a big country and programs with such different economic realities is, I think we're going to take some significant steps this year, and we want to continue to compete to attract the best and the brightest, but we want to make sure the playing field's level and students are making the appropriate academic and football decisions. And I think this year on the recruiting side, I think we're going to get a lot of that cleaned up, and for the long-term competitiveness across the country, I think that's a key step for us, and I'm excited to see it. We may have an online solution in the coming weeks that is pretty revolutionary for CIS.
Super. Thanks very much. Thanks for taking the time out, Steph. It's always good to catch up with you.
Thanks for the invite. Talk to you soon.